It started with a sound that didn't belong in the night. At exactly 3:17 a.m., Ayaan woke up to the noise of breathing. Not his own. It was slow, wet, and uneven, like lungs struggling to remember how they worked. The sound came from the corner of his room, near the old wooden cupboard that had been there since before he was born. His eyes were open, but his body refused to move. The ceiling fan spun above him, casting broken shadows that crawled along the walls like insects. The breathing stopped. Ayaan held his breath. Then something whispered his name. Ayaan. The voice was wrong. Too close. Too familiar. He squeezed his eyes shut and whispered a prayer under his breath. When he opened them again, the corner of the room was empty. The cupboard stood silent, its doors slightly open. He convinced himself it was a dream. The next morning, he found handprints on the inside of the cupboard door. They were pressed deep into the wood, as if something soft and wet had been forced against it from the inside. Ayaan lived alone in his family's ancestral house on the outskirts of the city. His parents had died in a car accident 3 years ago, and his relatives refused to live in the house. They said it was cursed. Ayaan called it superstition. He needed cheap rent and silence to finish his research work. The house had always felt wrong, but that morning it felt awake. The air smelled old, like dust, rust, and something faintly rotten. As he brushed his teeth, he noticed faint scratches on his neck. 3 thin red lines, perfectly parallel. He didn't remember scratching himself. That night, he locked the cupboard. At 3:17 a.m., the breathing returned. This time, it came from under the bed. Ayaan slowly sat up, his heart pounding so hard it felt painful. The breathing was louder now, accompanied by a faint clicking sound, like teeth tapping together. Ayaan. The voice whispered again, clearer than before. He grabbed his phone and turned on the flashlight, shining it under the bed. The light revealed nothing but darkness. Then a hand reached out and grabbed his wrist. The skin was ice cold, slimy, and hairless. Fingers too long, nails black and cracked. Ayaan screamed and pulled back with all his strength. He fell off the bed, hitting his head on the floor. When he looked again, the hand was gone. But the imprint of fingers remained on his wrist, slowly turning purple. The next day, Ayaan went to the local library. He searched old property records, newspapers, anything related to the house. An elderly librarian watched him from across the room, her eyes filled with something close to pity. "You shouldn't be there," she finally said. He showed her the address. Her face went pale. "That house was sealed once," she whispered. "Many years ago." She told him about a man named Ibrahim Halim, a doctor who lived there decades ago. A respected man by day, a monster by night. Children from nearby villages used to disappear. People said he believed fear could be preserved, extracted like blood. When the police finally raided the house, they found a hidden room behind the cupboard. Inside were bones, small ones. Ibrahim was never found. The room was sealed, the house abandoned. Ayaan felt his stomach twist. That night, he moved the cupboard. Behind it was a door. It was nailed shut. At 3:17 a.m., the nails began to bend. The breathing turned into laughter. Ayaan tried to leave the house, but the front door wouldn't open. Windows shattered when he touched them, slicing his hands. His phone showed no signal. The walls felt closer, the ceiling lower. The whispering grew louder. "So much fear," the voice said. "You've grown it well." The door behind the cupboard burst open. The smell was unbearable. Inside was a narrow room, walls covered in scratch marks and dried blood. Shelves lined with glass jars. Inside each jar floated something dark and pulsing, like organs still alive. In the center of the room stood a figure. Tall, bent, skin stretched too tight over its bones. Its face was stitched together from different parts, eyes mismatched, mouth far too wide. "Ibrahim," Ayaan whispered. The thing smiled. "I am what remains," it said, "and what returns." It stepped forward, and Ayaan realized the breathing wasn't from lungs. It was from the jars. "They wake when someone lives here," the creature continued. "When someone sleeps. When someone dreams." Ayaan tried to run, but the floor softened beneath his feet, pulling him down like mud. Hands emerged from the walls, gripping his arms and legs. "You cannot leave," Ibrahim said gently. "Not now? Not after feeding me for so long." Ayaan screamed as one of the jars shattered. A black mist poured out, entering his mouth, his nose, his eyes. He felt every fear he had ever known multiply. The dark, the silence, the thought of dying alone. His memories twisted, replaying in endless loops. When morning came, the house was quiet. A neighbor passing by saw Ayaan standing at the upstairs window, staring blankly outside. He didn't move, didn't blink. Weeks later, the house was rented again. The new tenant complained about strange sounds at night. Breathing, at exactly 3:17 a.m. And sometimes, if the house was very quiet, a new voice joined the whispering. Ayaan's begging. The first rule was simple: never answer the door after midnight. Bilal learned this rule too late. He had moved into the apartment on the 7th floor because it was cheap and because no one else wanted it. The landlord didn't ask many questions. He just slid the keys across the table and said, "If someone knocks late, pretend you're not home." Bilal laughed it off. On the first night, the knocking came at 12:43 a.m. It was slow, polite. 3 taps. Bilal froze on his bed. The apartment was small, just 1 bedroom, a kitchen, and a bathroom. The knocking echoed through the walls as if the sound was inside his skull. He waited. The knocking stopped. On the second night, it came at 12:47 a.m. This time, a voice followed. "Bilal, I know you're awake." His blood turned cold. He had never told the landlord his name. On the third night, the knocking came from inside the apartment. 3 taps. From the bathroom door. Bilal stared at it, unable to breathe. The bathroom light flickered on by itself, illuminating the thin gap beneath the door. Something dark moved on the other side, blocking the light. "Let me out," the voice whispered. It sounded exactly like him. Bilal didn't sleep after that. During the day, the apartment felt wrong. The mirrors reflected him a fraction of a second too late. His shadow bent in directions his body didn't. And sometimes, when he closed his eyes, he could still hear the knocking. He went back to the landlord. "You didn't tell me someone died there," Bilal said. The old man sighed. "No one died," he replied. "They stayed." He explained that years ago, the building had been used as temporary housing after a fire destroyed several homes nearby. Families came. People disappeared. Not physically, something worse. They stopped existing everywhere else. No records. No memories. Only the apartment remembered them. "They knock because they want to trade places," the landlord said. "They want to be outside again." Bilal laughed nervously. "That's impossible." The landlord met his eyes. "Then why haven't you slept?" That night, Bilal barricaded the doors. At 12:50 a.m., the knocking began again. This time it came from the walls, from the ceiling, from the floor beneath his feet. The apartment breathed. The walls expanded and contracted like lungs. Cracks formed, revealing darkness behind them, endless and moving. Faces pressed against the paint, stretching it thin, mouths opening in silent screams. "Open," they whispered in unison. Bilal covered his ears, but the sound was inside him. The bathroom mirror shattered. From its fragments, reflections crawled out. Dozens of versions of Bilal, each one distorted. Some were burned. Some were older. Some were crying. One stepped forward. "You're wasting the body," it said. The lights went out. In the darkness, hands grabbed him. Pulled. Stretched. He felt himself thinning, like smoke being pulled through a keyhole. Memories slipped away first. His childhood. His mother's face. His own name. When the lights came back on, the apartment was silent. Bilal stood in front of the door, smiling. At 12:43 a.m. the next night, someone knocked. Inside the apartment, something listened and learned a new name. The recording started by itself. Armin noticed it only because the red light on his old tape recorder blinked on at exactly 2:11 a.m. He sat up in bed, staring at the device on his desk. He hadn't used it in years. In fact, he was sure the batteries were dead. The tape hissed. Then a voice spoke. "Please don't listen past this point." Armin's heart began to race. The voice was shaky, terrified, and unmistakably his own. He reached for the recorder and stopped the tape. The room fell silent, but the silence felt wrong, stretched thin like skin about to tear. After a long moment, he laughed nervously and told himself it was stress. Hallucinations came with insomnia. Still, he removed the tape and locked it in a drawer. The next morning, the drawer was open. The tape lay on his pillow. That day, Armin tried to remember when he had bought the recorder. He couldn't. The memory simply wasn't there, like a missing page torn from a book. The more he thought about it, the worse the headache became. A dull pressure behind his eyes, as if something inside his skull was shifting. That night, at 2:11 a.m., the recorder clicked on again. Armin didn't move. The tape continued. "If you're hearing this," his recorded voice said, "then I didn't make it back." A cold sweat soaked his sheets. "I try to understand the sounds first," the voice continued. "That was the mistake. You should never analyze them. You should never slow them down." The tape stopped. The recorder rewound itself. Armin screamed and ripped the batteries out. At 2:11 a.m. the following night, the recorder turned on anyway. This time, the sound was different. Not speech. A low, rhythmic hum, layered with something like distant screaming. It vibrated through the floor, through the walls, through Armin's bones. His teeth chattered uncontrollably. He covered his ears. The sound continued inside his head. Images flooded his mind. Dark tunnels, endless staircases descending into flesh, doors made of bone. And something else. A presence. Listening. The next morning, Armin noticed people at work staring at him. When he spoke, his words echoed a fraction of a second late. When he laughed, it sounded raw and hollow. In the bathroom mirror, his reflection blinked when he didn't. That night, the tape spoke again. "You're starting to hear it now," the voice said softly. "I'm sorry." Armin smashed the recorder against the wall. It shattered into pieces. The tape spilled out, unspooling like black veins across the floor. The sound didn't stop. It came from the walls, from the ceiling, from inside his chest. At 2:11 a.m., the apartment lights flickered and went out. The darkness pressed in, heavy and warm. Armin felt the floor soften beneath his feet, becoming something like muscle. Each step made a wet sound. A doorway opened in the far wall. It hadn't been there before. From within the doorway came the hum, louder now, clearer. He realized with horror that it wasn't a single sound. It was thousands of voices layered together, all speaking at once, all saying the same thing. "Listen." Armin tried to run, but the room folded in on itself. The walls curved, the ceiling dropped. The doorway stretched closer. Hands emerged from the floor, grasping at his ankles. They were thin, pale, and covered in mouths that whispered into his skin. "Don't slow it down," they said. He was dragged through the doorway. On the other side was a vast space, impossible in size. A black ocean of sound stretched endlessly in all directions. Waves of noise crashed and pulled at him, tearing pieces of his thoughts away. He saw others there. People suspended in the air, mouths open, eyes empty. Tape recorders embedded in their chests, wires burrowing into flesh. They were listening. They were feeding something. A massive shape moved beneath the surface of the sound. Not visible, but felt. An intelligence vast and patient. Each time someone listened deeply enough, slowed the sound, analyzed it, the thing grew more aware of the world above. Armin understood. The recorder hadn't been capturing sound. It had been opening a door. The thing noticed him. The hum rose to a scream. Armin felt his memories peel away. His name, his face, his life, replaced by static and noise. His mouth opened, and sound poured out of him, joining the endless chorus. At 2:11 a.m., somewhere in the city, A tape recorder turned on by itself. A red light blinked, and a voice whispered, "Please don't listen past this point."